All right. Hello, welcome everyone. We made it. This is the last webinar in ALEI August webinar series 2022, covering legal considerations for choosing your farm business structure. My name is Megan Todd. I'm Legal Research Associate with the Agricultural Law Education Initiative. I just want to thank you, everyone who has joined us today and who will join us today or watch the recording later for tuning in. Today's topic, we're going to wrap up the series by taking a closer look at an LLC business, hearing from Laura Resnick with Butterbee Farms about her experience forming her LLC, why she went with an LLC, and some of the some management details and things like that hopefully will answer questions for anyone who's looking into forming an LLC. Before we get into that, though, I'm going to take a few minutes to do a quick recap on what we learned about LLCs during the entire series, really. But for anyone who missed the first webinar in the series on the 1st of August, where we covered the different types of business structures and what their formation requirements are, things like that, you can go back and rewatch the first recording. I'm going to do a quick recap today. As usual, if you have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat box and we will get to them at the end. We will have plenty of time at the end to talk about questions. And if you want to unmute yourself, we can have more of a conversational style discussion at that point too. Sarah Everhart, my colleague at ALEI, will actually handle the question moderation at the end of the webinar today and wrap us up. So she's on the call. So if somebody else pops up at the end to start moderating questions, that's totally planned for. Don't worry about that. But with that, let's get started. So just quick plug, ALEI. We are a partnership with University of Maryland campuses, lawyers, whose purpose it is to help create legal resources for the agricultural community in Maryland, all free. Visit our website, umaglaw.org, to find out what we have. If you have any questions or don't see what you need, or questions about whatever you do see on our website, you can email us at umd.edu, or you can email me directly. My contact information is at the end of the presentation as well. A quick disclaimer that this presentation is for educational purposes only, not intended to be legal advice. Even if you are planning on forming an LLC and it seems like it's really pertinent to your situation, we have noted multiple times throughout the series that an attorney can be a valuable asset to your business management and your planning team. And the Maryland State Bar Association Ag Law section has a directory of lawyers in the state who handle agricultural law issues from different topics. So business formation, land use issues, things like that, and based on location as well. So you can see the link to that resource at the end of this slideshow as well. Okay, so let's do our recap. Limited liability companies. As we heard from, I think, every speaker this month, LLCs are one of the newest and most popular forms of business structure, or way to organize your business. And that's for a variety of reasons. One main reason being that members of an LLC do have personal liability protections. And just want to throw in a caveat there that you have to make sure that to maintain those personal liability protections, you operate the business according to what your operating agreement says you will do, and you don't commingle your business and your personal assets. What I'm getting at is there's a way to pierce the corporate veil, as we've talked about before, if you commingle assets, you run the business in a way that doesn't comport with your operating agreement. But if you keep separate accounts, for business accounts, personal accounts, things like that, you can help make sure you maintain that personal liability protection. And even though an LLC has personal liability protection from business debts and business obligations, you would still, of course, as we heard from Mr. Barron, the Maryland Insurance Administration representative, still want to carry commercial insurance to manage your business risks. So anything from premises liability to product liability, if you're creating a value-added product, And it really will depend, as Mr. Barron mentioned, on the types of activities, the size of your operation, what you have going on. So talking to an insurance agent to help you figure out what your commercial insurance needs will help protect your business even more. LLCs are more flexible than corporations, in that they're a little bit less formal, less paperwork than a corporation itself. You can get contributions to an LLC in any form. So it can be money, it could be equipment, it could be land. And there's no limit on the number of members, the number of owners an LLC can have. And also members, those members can be individuals, they can be entities, they can be, so if you've got multiple businesses coming together for a new endeavor, you know, the owners of a new LLC can all be businesses themselves as well. For managing your LLC, you have the option to choose whether management will be based upon the contribution percentage or contribution amounts of the owners, or to elect one or more members to be the managers on a day-to-day basis. We heard from Mr. Anuaku, the CPA from the W2 group earlier this month as well, on different tax issues. But LLCs, while they are recognized as a legal business entity in the state of Maryland, they don't have a unique tax entity identification through the IRS. So if you form an LLC, you're going to have to decide if you want to be taxed as a partnership or as a corporation. And just quickly reminding you, a partnership, you would be pass-through entity where you report your taxes on your personal income tax returns every year. Corporation, more complicated, potential double taxation, depending on the type of corporation you choose. But you know, whatever is best for your business, you can discuss with your accountant and figure that out. Another thing we heard from Miss Young, from Heather Young, about transitions and estate planning for your business. And LLCs have a great benefit of being a little bit more long living, and you can determine in your operating agreement how you're going to pass on membership or ownership interests, who members can pass their ownership interests to, if you want to keep it in the family, so to speak, if you want to limit transfers to family members, things like that. But you can put those in your operating agreement, unlike sole proprietorships or partnerships that will dissolve upon the death of either the owner, if you're a sole proprietor, or a partner, if you're in partnership with one or more people. And then there are some other options for sort of customizing your LLC, in the fact that if you want to qualify as a family farm business, according to what the Maryland statute says, you would incorporate the required language into your business charter and your operating agreement. We talked on Monday about benefit corporations and benefit LLCs in the state of Maryland. So if you wanted to incorporate or be recognized as the benefit LLC, you could put those statutory requirements in your operating agreement, so that your management style would reflect the social responsibility and the public benefits that you want your business to pursue. And if you wanted to run your LLC as a nonprofit, that's also an option, as long as you comply with the IRS standards and reporting requirements, things like that, that you would need to qualify for nonprofit tax exempt status. So that's the quick recap on LLCs, what we learned this past month. Here's the quick slide to quickly go over what the formation requirements are for Maryland. Remembering that you would need to have your articles of organization, your business charter, where you name all your owners. You have the address of your physical principal office within the state of Maryland, as well as the resident agent location and name, any other provisions that you agree upon. Then you're going to have your operating agreement, which are basically the rules of the road for how you're going to run your business. And then you definitely want to include some things about buy-sell agreements, or ownership transfers, how the business is going to be valued. And that kind of goes to business succession planning, because an LLC can be a little bit more It's more longevity in the business itself. And so if you do plan to pass it off at some point, or if you want to sell it off at the end, if people are ready to walk away, the dissolution procedures and how are you going to value the business to know how much you should expect for a buyout, things like that. As far as maintenance, you're going to be required when you run an LLC to file an annual report with the Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxations. Also need to file a copy of your business personal property tax returns. And then for any changes that you decide to implement in your operating agreement, so your management decisions or number of owners that are involved in the business, things like that will require an article of amendment to be filed with SDAT as well, with a fee. And the consent required to file those amendments it's unanimous unless it's otherwise stated in the operating agreement. So pretty basic, and there are some links here for any further reading for people who are interested in reading more about LLCs. But that is my recap. Here is the link for anyone who's going to get the copy of my slide deck. You'll be able to click on this picture here, and it'll take you to the webpage with the legal services directory in case you want to try to find a lawyer to help you. And you will also have the slide with my contact information if you want to give me a call or shoot me an email to ask me more questions. So with that, I'm wrapping up. Does anybody have questions about the recap on LLCs before Laura gets started? Hearing none, I will say, Laura, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to share some slides. They're just really pretty pictures more than anything. I'm just mostly going to tell our story and talk about how we made the decision to be an LLC business. And yeah, just going to go for it. So please let me know if you can't hear me. There's a mower going on outside and my headphones weren't working. So okay, thank you. Good, I'm getting a thumbs up. So I'm Laura Beth Resnick. I own Butterbee Farm. We're in our 10th year of growing here, which is really exciting, 10-year anniversary. I feel like we really made it here to a new milestone. And we grow cut flowers. We mostly sell to florists and designers in Baltimore and DC. We love working with florists. This one-on-one relationship is really meaningful and fun to be in. So thank you for the happy anniversary chat. Appreciate it. So let's see, I just want to give you a little bit of background about like how we operate as a farm before I get into the LLC stuff so you can get a sense of context. When I started my business, I didn't have land and I wasn't looking to buy land, didn't feel like I could afford it. Definitely couldn't have afforded it at the time. So leasing was really our only option. And we were lucky to have an old family friend who had some land in Baltimore County that they were willing to lease to us. So we started on about a half acre. And every year we grew more. We're on 5 acres now. Every year we built a high tunnel. We built a lot of high tunnels. So now we have some heated high tunnels and some unheated hoops. We grow almost year round. In the cut flower industry, all of the great flower holidays are during the off season, like technically the off season for the Chesapeake area. So, Valentine's Day, Easter, and Mother's Day are still times when really it's pretty hard to have flowers blooming outside. And then there are no holidays in the summer, unfortunately, that are big flower holidays. And then in the fall, we have a big wedding season, and then Thanksgiving and Christmas, which of course are after the frost. So these high tunnels and greenhouses have been really important to our success, and we're really glad that we grew them or built them. One thing to know about our business is we're pretty small. So we do have 5 acres, but we most of that is actually in perennials and woodies, which is a cut flower affectionate term for like shrubs that you would cut on, like, dogwood and willow and just like branches essentially. So they don't require much maintenance. So we really only grow about 1.5 acres to 2 acres of actual annuals, like the really more hands-on kind of crops, and everything else is perennial on the farm. We are also moving our farm in 7 weeks to our own land. We finally bought our own land. We, as me and my husband, and we're moving to Whitehall, Maryland. We'll be on the same amount of land, but we're doubling our heated greenhouse space. So those tunnels are going to be actually finished by the end of this week. And there's just a lot that goes into moving a farm, I tell you. So that's kind of what I've been consumed by lately. On the farm, we have just 2 full-time employees that are seasonal, and that works out pretty well for us. Typically an all-woman team. Typically we're all in our 20s and 30s. Not that it has to be that way, but those are the people who want to work outside in the heat, I guess. So yeah, I think that's mostly the lay of the land there. Think if I forgot anything, I don't think so. Okay, so well, I guess I should tell you our sales channels. So I told you we mostly sell to florists. We also do a little bit of direct to consumer. So we'll do DIY buckets to people who are doing their own flowers. DIY is just do it yourself. So we have wedding couples, people who want to have a bouquet bar for like teacher appreciation, or I mean, we've done bouquet bars and flowers for all kinds of different events. So we do that, but we don't design it all. So these are bulk flowers that we just pick whatever looks nice that week and kind of pick a nice assortment of focals, fillers, and foliages for people to play with. And I also teach a lot of classes. So I teach online classes. You can find out more about those on our website. I teach people how to grow cut flowers for their gardens, for their farms. I teach a very popular crop planting class. And we do have some events at the farm, although since the pandemic, I'm sure, as you all know, that kind of stopped. And then because we're moving this year, we were just like, we're not doing any events. We need to hold off on putting more things in the calendar. So hopefully one day in the future, we'll be able to have more people at the new farm. And finally, we also have a plant shop, which is like a seedling sale in the spring and the fall, where we sell cut flower seedlings to people who want to have cut flower gardens. And that has been surprisingly popular. So that's pretty fun. Okay, so LLCs, which is what I know we're here to talk about. As I mentioned, when we started our farm, it was just me, I hadn't met my husband yet, and we were leasing just 1/13 of an acre, like a tiny little plot that was part of a nonprofit farm in Baltimore called Whitelaw Community Farm. And they didn't require us to have any kind of special insurance. Like, it was a very informal agreement. I started as a sole proprietor because I didn't know anything, and it was just me, and it was the 13th of an acre. And I think that was the right decision. The next year we moved the farm to our current farm, where we've been for 9 years, where we lease this land from this family friend who has this beautiful property in Baltimore County. When we signed our lease agreement with them, one of their only requirements for us was that we have an LLC business rather than a sole proprietorship. And that was really important to them because the LLC, as you know, provides kind of like an extra layer of protection in terms of liability. So they were like, you need to basically protect yourself and make sure that if somebody comes to pick up flowers and drives their car into the barn or something like that, that you're protected and everything is okay. So we were required by our landlords to have an LLC, and they also asked us to have limited liability insurance, or I guess it's just liability insurance. Sorry. Yeah. Someone correct me if I'm saying these things wrong, but anyway, just liability insurance up to, I think they wanted us to have $1 million of coverage, which doesn't mean you have to pay $1 million. It just means that's the coverage. So yeah, we work with Farm Family Insurance for our insurance, and yeah, it's been great. They kind of understand what we're trying to do here. So we've been with them for a while now. And one thing about the LLC that is a little confusing, or has been a little confusing for me and my husband, is I started the farm by myself. And when he joined, we were like, well, should he be part of the LLC? That would make sense. But it does seem like it's a little bit more complicated, not a lot, but just a little bit, when you have multiple people in that partnership through the LLC. Then you have to decide what % people get. And there's a little more paperwork for the accountant to file every year too. There's this one tax thing I'm not even going to try to explain, that our accountant just explained to us the other day, because we're coming up on trying to make this decision again. But anyway, suffice it to say that we decided it would just be me on the LLC. And that actually worked out well, because there's a lot of grants that are sort of directed towards women-owned businesses. And my husband is a man and I'm a woman. So it kind of makes sense for me to be the only one on the LLC, because then I can honestly say, this is my business. And actually, I mean, it is my business. He kind of works for me. And he's actually been working off the farm as groundskeeper for the property that we lease land from for the past 5 years. So what I meant when I said that this decision is coming around again is that I've been the sole member of this LLC for the past 9 years, but now that we're moving our farm and he is leaving his groundskeeping job and joining me full-time in the business, we were like, okay, maybe it's time for you to be on the LLC with me. So we called our accountant last week. So this webinar is very timely. And we're like, what are the benefits of Joshua, my husband, being a member of the LLC? And our accountant was like, honestly, it's just going to cost you a little bit more because there's more paperwork for me to do. And then there is, like I said, this one tax thing where like, if you make a certain amount, then anything over that amount doesn't get taxed. But if there are multiple people in the partnership, then it's less likely you'll reach that threshold. So I don't know, whatever. I'm trying to say it, but talk to your accountant. Anyway, so I think ultimately we've made the decision not to put him on the LLC yet again. And what we talked about is how him being a member of our LLC would be really just a symbolic gesture to sort of be like, okay, we're in this together. Like we're both doing this full time now. So if it really matters to him, then we'll put him on there. And if it doesn't matter to him, then we'll save a little money and I'll still be the sole owner of the LLC just for simplification. And also in the future, as we continue to apply for grants, we can still keep saying this is a woman-owned business. So those are just some thoughts. There's a chat here. What's your monthly insurance premium? Honestly, I don't know the answer to that because it just changed because now we have our own land and everything is bundled and our car insurance is bundled too. All of our insurance is bundled through Farm Family. So I don't know. I'm so sorry, but I think it's not more than several $1,000s a year. And that's including car insurance. Now that we have our new insurance, it might be more. I'm not sure. I have to look. But I think that's normal. So we also have more infrastructure than a lot of small farms. So we have our heated greenhouses that have electric and, they're really fancy. They've got like roof vents. There's special computers in there that do everything, open the sides, open the roof. So our insurance might need to be a little higher to cover all of that than some of your insurance might need to be. So, it kind of depends on what you have also. But liability insurance isn't really that expensive in the grand scheme of things, and it's worth having, it's like just that extra feeling of safety, Leslie says, when you say car insurance, is that personal or commercial vehicle? Yeah, so I'm just going to say this is not legal advice, which I know but our car insurance is all bundled as under our commercial policy. And the reason for that is because we use all of our cars for the business all the time, like mostly they're for the business. So it does get a little bit sticky, right? Like sometimes you do get in the car and you go see your mom and that's not for the business. So we just do our best to keep track of stuff. There's two kinds of ways of tracking your mileage, actual and what's the other one? Does anyone know? Actual and can't think of it right now. Anyway, there's two ways. One of them is where you like track your mileage, as you all know, like you write down, you went 30 miles to this flower delivery and back. And then the other one is where you just deduct all your expenses for gas. So we do all your expenses for gas because we really do mostly do that. And then we do also have to submit some mileage, I think, but I'm not sure. My accountant figures this out for me, but that's how we do it. It's all commercial. Sorry. That was a super long answer that went absolutely nowhere. I apologize. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to stay on this slide for the rest of it, I guess. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else we talked about with the LLC that would be super relevant. I've never needed to use it, I guess, like knock wood, but no one has ever sued me yet. So I've never needed to be like, oh, the business is separate from me. Like they're different. Leave me alone. That hasn't had to happen, but it definitely feels good to have the LLC. And yeah. Is there anything that we talked about, Megan, that I didn't talk about?
No, that's a good start. Let's see. We're at 12:24. People, if anybody has questions, feel free to like put your hand up or put them in the chat box. But one thing I was wondering, so you did mention a little bit, we had talked about the transitions and adding potentially in your husband and what considerations went into that. So thanks for sharing that. That was really interesting. Have you thought about any business succession planning at this point in terms of passing on your ownership interests, to your kids, future kids, or family members, or anybody else who wants to get involved? What are your thoughts in the future?
I know we have to think about that at some point. We don't have kids and don't have, immediate plans to have kids, but definitely we should be thinking about that at some point. And we don't even have wills, you guys. We need to probably do that, get on this. I'm only 33. Is that too old to say that I still don't have this together in my life? But yeah, we should probably do that. We're right now, everything is focused on just getting to the new place and getting settled there. And I know there's going to be some legal stuff to consider concerning the will and succession, because we're moving to the new farm with my parents too. There's 2 houses on the property and they're moving as well. And so I'm sure there is something there where like if something should happen to us, like maybe they own the LLC, or I don't know what. In terms of succession, I don't know too much about it, but the one thing I'll say is that moving my farm has taught me from one place to the new place that most people don't, most lenders, for example, or people in general don't really value farms that much, like the stuff that we have, for example, or people don't put a value on like how much you've improved the soil over 10 years. I wish that somebody would like, buy us out and like pay us for like all the sweat and blood that we put into the soil so that it would be like so much more amazing than when we started here. But like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that one day if and when we sell our LLC, for example, it's not going to be that valuable, because despite having built all this amazing infrastructure and put in all this work, farms are just not valued as they should be, I think. That said, we were able to sell our infrastructure at our current property. All of our high tunnels and greenhouses, our walk-in cooler, our fencing, to our landowners. And that was really exciting and awesome to be able to do. And I do feel like they are paying us the right price for it, and like they are valuing it, but they are not poor. And most farmers who are starting out are not wealthy. So it is hard to imagine anyone else having been able to afford it, I guess. So like, again, when it comes to succession, I know I have a lot of thinking to do about this, and I haven't really done much, but I guess I have in my head that like, if we ever do sell our business, it's not going to be worth that much, because like either whoever it is we want to buy it won't be able to afford it, or because, who wants to pay $100 million for a couple of greenhouses, so.
All right, interesting. Well,
A little bit of a dark perspective.
we can hope things look up in the future.
Yeah.
I have one other question, and then I see Stephen has a question in the chat about whether, so I'll ask his question first, actually. Did you consider lowering your liability insurance after you formed your LLC? Did you lower your policy amount?
We couldn't because of our lease agreement. Yeah. So while we were here, we were required to have a certain amount of insurance, and so we always did. And then when we go to the new place, we're not required to have that amount of insurance, but we're building more stuff there, and we're having our home policy too. And, there's just like more stuff to cover. So that's why our policy is going up.
Yeah. So my second question was, and I think we talked about this a little bit, but to what extent did you mentioned that your accountant is like someone you like lean on really heavily to help you with the management of your business and keeping track of everything, but to what extent did you use an attorney to help you form your business, to write your business documents, and how often do you consult with an attorney when you make management decisions?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, Sarah Everard, who works with you or is in charge of everything, I don't know. Yeah, she's in charge. She's the queen. So we've reached out to her a whole bunch of times over the years to get free legal advice, because as you know, lawyers are expensive and farmers often can't really afford it. So this service is amazing and has saved my butt many times. And I know that, like if we really needed like hands-on, in-depth legal advice, we'd probably have to hire someone. But for our quick questions, working with the ALEI, I don't know, ALEI has been really amazing. So every so often, I would say like maybe once a year, I have a legal question that I'll shoot you guys. Our new accountant is also a lawyer, so multi-talented person. That has been really useful through our farm transition to the new place, because there's been some stuff that has come up legally. Like, again, we're buying this property with my parents. So what are the legal things to watch out for there? Like, what if one of us dies? Like, do we need to like have something written? There's like a lot of stuff that we've had to talk about and think about. It's been nice to be able to bounce that stuff off of him. But when it comes to writing my own like LLC documents, I did that when I was 23 years old and started my business 10 years ago. And I I did not hire anyone. I didn't put anything in there. I think it's like the shortest LLC document ever written is just like my name and my address and my phone number, and that's it. So there's no language. When we move, actually within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be updating our LLC to reflect our new address. And that's a time when I might think about adding a little more language to it because I'll be in there messing around anyway. So yeah, I might actually look back at some of the presentations here and see if there's anything I might want to add. But correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, but as far as I know, the language in the LLC isn't that important, right? Like who is holding you accountable to like, your commitment to having your business be a certain way.
Oh, thanks for that question.
Yeah. Is it the opposite of what I just said is true? I don't know.
Well, I would say, well, and Sarah, please feel free to jump in if you want to say something more pertinent, but I would say like it is pretty important. I would, when you do your amendment, it's a great opportunity if you, to do it all in one single filing, so you don't have to duplicate the application fee, but to amend your operating agreement language and review some of those documents to make sure you're covering the potential like what ifs in the future of your business. Because yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it might just be you holding yourself accountable. But like I said before, if you ever did have something pop up that, well, two things. If you did have something pop up where there was a question of whether or not you're running your business according to what you said, I guess, if there's something in there, they can't say you didn't, but it just might be helpful for you to like navigate future situations. And then I've also heard that there are instances where if you are applying for some funding, a bank might ask to see your operating agreement to know that you are on top of, you've thought about how to manage your business and you've thought about those types of situations. So they would feel a bit more secure in providing funding for you. Those are the two things that I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did have to share our LLC documents with our farm service agency loan officer to get our operating loan to build our new greenhouses. But I didn't get the impression that she needed to look at the language. She just wanted to make sure we were legally an LLC. So, but it's good to know. So I guess like what I'm hearing you say is that like, if I were to get into some kind of trouble in the future, it would be good to have some stuff written down to be like, these are our tenants.
Yeah, CYA. And then, the main things are like buy, sell, dissolution of the business, for instance, Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just I think you said it, Megan, but the important thing is to differentiate between the formation documents, which are very simple documents where you just have to list minimally, what's the purpose of the LLC and who do you want to be the resident agent. That stuff's very short. And, potentially you could do that on your own. But the operating agreement, that's a detailed legal document that's the sort of rules for how you're going to play the game, is how I think about it. And that definitely is something you want to seek legal counsel on. And I think the operating agreement, that's what should reflect what's actually going on. So unless you're adding new members, you don't typically have to go back and amend the LLC formation documents, but people amend their operating agreements often. And that's the thing that you want to make sure it's worth investing in. When I was in private practice, a lot of people would go and they would fill the formation documents out themselves and they'd file it with the state and pay a couple $100 and they'd say, I have an LLC, I'm all set. And I'd say, where's your operating agreement? They're like, I don't know. I don't have an operating agreement. I'm like, well, that's it. That's actually the LLC is the operating agreement. So that's really kind of what you want to focus on, the content within that operating agreement.
Yeah, I don't know if I have one. I think maybe that's what's happening is that I have the first thing, the filing thing, and I don't know if I have. Where would it be?
Yeah, if you didn't have a lawyer draft, if you had a lawyer, did you have a lawyer help you with okay.
Heck no.
All right. So I think you would want to go to a lawyer and have them do that. And potentially this accountant who sounds like they've got a good base of knowledge would be the right person to do that. I typically tell people to make sure their accountants and their attorneys are friendly with each other or on kind of the same page, because you have to make sure your tax advice and your legal advice is marrying up and effectuating what you want it to effectuate. So I would definitely have somebody draft you an operating agreement if you don't have one somewhere. I mean, it's not the most exciting document in the world, so sometimes people may forget that they have one.
Yeah, it's been 10 years since I did this, so
Yeah.
that's enough time for me to forget if I have one or not, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad I came to this. There's a couple, I know, yeah. There's a couple questions over here. Let's see. Most farm and ranch packages bundle in home insurance and sometimes auto. Does this create any issues with shielding these assets with an LLC?
That's a good question. I would think it's going to depend who's named as the insured on the insurance policy. Like, is it Laura Resnick Insurance or is it Butterbee Farm Insurance? That's kind of my initial take on that, but that's a good question that makes me want to dig a little bit deeper and find the answer to that question. So maybe we can look into that and then email the folks that attended this webinar and get back to you on that one. I'd like to hear from both a lawyer and an insurance agent on that one. I think, more importantly, and just, I'm sure Megan has said it and our other guests that have been a part of this great series, but just day in and day out functioning to separate is going to be the most important thing, right? Like, is the lease entered into by the LLC's name? Are the contracts entered into by the LLC's name? Is the LLC rather than an individual actually purchasing the equipment? All of those sort of day-to-day things. Does the LLC have a bank account? Basically we want this LLC to function in every way like a person would function.
Cool. And then Sally asked, can you share grant sources? I think you meant like, what grants have we gotten? We've applied for a lot of grants. We've gotten some. So the USDA, your farm service agency has a lot of grants. Definitely, if you don't know your not farm service agency, NRCS, National Resources Conservation Service. If you don't know your NRCS agent, you definitely need to connect with that person immediately because they're like the fairy godparents of money for farmers. So go find them. You can find their information online. If you look up the NRCS website, they're listed by county, I think. So that's a good one. We recently got a BGE grant, for example, that preferred woman-owned or minority-owned businesses. So that was a good one, where what we were talking about kind of came into play. And there's also the value-added producer grant through USDA if you're doing any value-added producer stuff like jam or cheese, or even just getting your organic certification. There's a lot. I could go on. The best thing to do is to connect with Future Harvest CASA, Future Harvest Chesapeake Alliance for Sustainable Agriculture. They are always like posting and sending, like blurbs about new grants that are coming out. So that's a good place to start, going to their conference, talking to other farmers, that kind of thing. That's my recommendation there. And yep. So Robert said, you may want to plan for temporary or long-term disability. Make sure your husband or partner can write checks for business. Totally. Yeah. So I have to talk to my accountant/lawyer about my LLC.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't what this webinar is about, but you can get a very simple will with, before you have kids. Wills can be very, very simple. And I think anybody that you go to for that type of planning is going to tell you to have 3 documents: a will, an advanced medical directive, which is what we call a living will in Maryland, and then a power of attorney. And your power of attorney is what's going to let your spouse or whomever you designate do your banking, sign your checks, basically they could step into your financial shoes. So go get those 3 things done. It's not fun, but I usually bug farmers in the winter about it because they seem to have a little bit more time on their hands. Go put that on your annual to-do list. Go get those 3 documents done, because if you were somehow incapacitated, you're going to leave your family with a headache. And just getting those 3 documents done it's going to save a lot of time and trouble.
Hey, Sarah, can I follow up on that real quick?
Yeah.
So I know in some states you can do like a durable power of attorney versus just a simple statutory power of attorney. Do you know if Maryland has the two different types?
Yes, you can do either one. So yeah, you can customize it. It can be effective immediately. So depending on your relationship with the person you're designating, you can have them, you can give them basically the power to step into your shoes, whether or not you're incapacitated. Or you can have it sort of spring into action upon you not being able to act for yourself. So you can do it either way in Maryland.
Cool. Fun stuff, everyone. Sally says, I have a real estate LLC and consider adding my husband. Think it makes sense not to add him now so I can operate as a woman-owned business. I don't know that you can't operate as a woman-owned business with your husband on the LLC. I'm guessing you would just have to be the majority owner to state that you were a woman-owned business. I don't know for sure. And none of the grants that I mentioned ever followed up with me and made sure that we're a woman-owned business. Of course, you should be honest about those things, don't just lie about it. But I'm sure it's fine for your partner to be on there as long as they're the minority. That's my guess.
Yeah, and some of the information is publicly available, so they can always look up your business to verify. But yeah, that's a good point about the majority ownership interest. So if you wanted to add, but just have them be like a 40% owner, for instance.
Yeah. And Lynn says, not a cheery, but a necessary conversation. We can be cheerful about having it.
Better now than when you are in a corner.
Yeah, totally. I think one thing that I found really challenging is not coming from a law or a business background. I never went to business school. I obviously did not go to law school, and I'm not an accountant. So just putting all this information together is really challenging. And that's why webinars like this are so important. But there's so many little threads to follow, I forgot to file my personal property return for the LLC one year. And then I was not in good standing and didn't even know until the year later, there's all these little things to remember. So one thing that I found really helpful, I use Google Calendar to just keep track of my life. I will put annual reminders in my calendar that just repeat infinitely. So, and then you can also put a notification on there. So if it's February 15th or something, and it's time to file your personal property return, your $300 payment for being an LLC, then I'll get a reminder every year. And so I don't have to hold that information in my brain. So that's just one small way. And sometimes I still forget stuff. And I've been through 5 accountants trying to find somebody who understood both farming and agriculture, and also who would work with me in the way that I wanted to be worked with, I guess. So it is tricky finding somebody who will keep you on track. And I think ultimately it's really up to you as the business owner to do that for yourself. Unless you want to hire a company that's you probably have to pay more, who will really do all your bookkeeping, file all your taxes, do stuff for you. But probably as farmers, we're not doing that. So it's really up to you.
No, that's an important point. And it's something to consider when you're designating your resident agent for your LLC. Some people choose lawyers for that reason, because we're typically good at keeping up with filing dates, and we're good at checking our mail and responding. So, if you're the kind of person that gets behind with opening your mail, I know I personally am. I'm good with work, but bad with personal mail sometimes. If you would want somebody who's going to be sort of on top of that paperwork. So it's also, it doesn't have to be a lawyer. If you've got somebody within the business or within your family, if the type A, organized, keeps track of all those things, that's probably the right person to be the resident agent. Doesn't have anything to do with who's the boss, right? It's the person who's going to be sort of the eyes and ears of the corporation and make sure that you stay on the straight and narrow. And that, for example, if you got a letter informing you that somebody filed for unemployment, you have a very short window to turn around that response. Sometimes it can be less than 2 weeks. So that's something that would go to the resident agent. So just think about that in terms of making that choice.
Yeah, totally. That's interesting. I didn't realize that the resident agent could be someone, not me. So good to know. Right now, the way that we do it, or I do it, is that I would still be the resident agent, but I sort of have like a group of people who I can ask I could ask the same question to all those people, and like hopefully between them somebody can tell me the truth. So I have a bookkeeper who does some of my books, not all. I mostly do my own books through QuickBooks, but I'll send her my books every few months for reconciliation, and she helps me figure out how much sales tax I owe and just like little things. So she can answer some of these questions for me. The accountant / lawyer can answer some questions for me. And then I always like to suggest that if you're a new farmer, it's good to have a couple people who are mentors who know this stuff and have been through this stuff and have their own small businesses. So my dad has a small business, so I ask him some of these questions, and a couple of farmer friends too, just ask them how they make these decisions and what they've been told by their accountants, and sort of put all that information together to get where I need to go. Pedro sent me a direct message. What is your company's next goal? Such a good question. Yeah, so next goal is the next decade at our new farm. So we're going into year 11 next year, and we are going to be growing in a lot more heated greenhouse space. So we're excited to just have more product when our florists need the product off season. And I guess the other big goal is to move more in a regenerative agriculture direction. I know that's like a really broad term, but for us, what that means is trying to sort of close the loop of whatever we produce on the farm should be able to be recycled on the farm and back again. And always working on our soil biology and figuring out how to rely less on pesticides and fungicides in our greenhouses and more on beneficial insects and you know, sort of like homemade, it's the type of application is called Korean natural farming, but it's sort of like using your own farm products to create the like sprays that you might need to use to prevent powdery mildew or to deal with aphids or whatever. So sort of moving in like this is more environmentally friendly direction that we're very excited about. Sally asked, how many employees do you have? We have two. We have two seasonal employees. So they work March through November, and or the equivalent of two. We have like some part-time people that are cobbled together to make two. And then I work full-time year round, and my husband hasn't worked on the farm in a long time, but he will starting next year. One question that nobody's asked, but I think maybe Megan and I talked about it, that is related to this is, how do I pay myself? So because we're an LLC, we pay ourselves, or I could pay myself just like a sole proprietor would, or like a contractor would, you know, like there's no payroll for me. There's no, my husband isn't on payroll because he's not part of the business. So I pay my employees through payroll, but when it comes to paying myself, we take what's called an owner's draw, which is what it's called when an LLC owner pays themselves. And that draw is taxed as though I were a sole proprietor. So like a sole proprietor and an LLC are taxed, LLC single owner LLC are taxed the same way. So we have to either like take regular payments, like take regular owner's draws out of the business checking and into the personal checking, or we have to just like do it whenever we feel like we have extra money, which is what I always end up doing. So at the end of the year, typically I'll be like, okay, like we need to keep $20,000 in the business checking account. I always like to have that as a minimum for what's in the business checking account. And then I'll put everything else in my pocket. Yeah, so that's how we approach payment.
Any other questions for Laura? Laura, I want to say thank you. We really, really appreciate your help. The thanks is going both ways, because no one wants to listen to lawyers for an hour. It is much more entertaining, useful, and helpful to hear from a farmer and how all these things kind of are put into place on your business. So thank you. And we're so happy to hear you're getting your own land and things are going so well for you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much. Well, I have a question for you, which is, sure. People can't, I mean, I know people can ask the ALEI questions when there's questions, but are you also hireable? Like if, you know, I wanted to hire you to do some of these things we talked about, is that something we could do, or one of your team, or do you refer people out?
We refer people out. And I guess I will say, I was in private practice. I'm not doing that currently. I'm not, you know, helping people. I'm not drafting operating agreements and things like that, or leases and things like that. We are happy to come and speak to farm groups about these issues. So if anybody on the webinar, you know, if you've County Farm Bureau or just even a small group, you know, we've come and we will sit around the kitchen table and talk to a handful of farmers on issues like this and customize educational programs for, you know, whatever kind of agricultural law issues that you have. When it comes time to actually hiring a lawyer, I'm happy to help you with a referral. The tool that we use for referrals is the Maryland State Bar Association's agricultural section directory. So the Bar Association has a bunch of different sections. One of them is the ag section, and forgive me if Megan's mentioned this on a previous webinar, but the ag section, they're lawyers throughout the state, and some of them are from farm backgrounds, some of them have farm spouses. They've got expertise in handling these issues. So, you know, like Laura was saying, it can be kind of tricky to talk about these issues with professionals that don't understand farming. The thought with the directory was, let's get a directory together so that, you know, to help farmers be able to identify those folks. So that resource is on the ALEI website. So just look for the ag law section directory, and I would use that to find someone to help you. All right. Well, thanks everybody so much. Please keep an eye on our website for our future educational programs. As you have questions or run into issues, feel free to email us. We love to hear from you. Often some of our best resources have been created out of folks just saying, hey, this was a difficult thing for me to navigate. This was a difficult thing for me to understand. And so then, you know, we'll do something like this, do some education to try to help people through it. Can I share the link for a future webinar? I will share our website, and I think that would be the best place. We keep our website pretty up to date with all of our programs. We've got a conference coming up on October 28th. You can go in person or you can live stream it. It is on agricultural and environmental law. Got a lot of different issues coming up. And if anybody needs continuing nutrient management education credits, you can also get a couple continuing nutrient management education credits for attending. So check that out if October 28th is a date that works for you. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Laura. Good to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you too. Thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.